Welcome back. This is Daybreak, and thank you for staying with us here on the broadcast. The hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Senator Ledama Olekina now joins us. He is the Senator, Narok County. Good morning, Senator.
Very good morning
Thanks
to you.
Thanks for your time.
How are you doing?
Another new hairstyle on the new year, on the show.
No, you didn't.
For the broadcast.
Yes.
Asante. Earlier on, we had, earlier mentioned, the Law Society of Kenya President Eric Theuri and also Kamukunji, Member of Parliament Yusuf Hassan Abdi. Gentlemen, your time is all appreciated. Of course, our main agenda of the day is the state of democracy in Kenya, a lot developing in the country. But let's begin with a look at the front pages of the publications. And pressure mounts on schools as admissions of 1.4 million Form 1s is underway. There's a pains and tears over delayed, the paper says, CDF money on pages number 6 and 7. This, it says, some institutions have begun sending learners home to collect school fees, with the worst affected being students in day schools. Some lawmakers have termed the delay in the disbursement of the CDF as an extremely unfortunate state of affairs. There are pending applications that were made, fees arrears, and schools that have been taken to court by suppliers over failure to pay them. We'll be talking more about that. Honorable Yusuf Hassan, may I begin with you as a lawmaker? And how much of an effect is this having on you directly and also on the learners that depend on the Constituency Development Fund?
It is extremely a distressing time for both the parents and for members of Parliament because this time of the year is when we would be dispersing the necessary funds to take our kids to school, back to school, and particularly representing an urban constituency with a high number of informal settlement people. Given the economic conditions in the country in general, a lot of parents are distressed. They don't have the ability to be able to send their young kids to school. And therefore, the delay in the disbursement of the CDF bursary fund is of a great concern because all our offices are packed with people who are looking for support and assistance and who are saying the kids are now being sent back home. So I think it is a matter of urgency, absolute emergency situation for us and for the parents, for these funds to be released in the quickest time possible so that our kids, our children, and the young students who are starting schools all over the country can be assisted at this particular time, and they can get into the usual rigmarole of studying and thinking about doing their exams later in this term and so on.
In December, lawmakers, before they went on a recess set to be back next month in Feb, had even threatened to impeach the Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u. I wonder whether you are part of the protests in Parliament, but what has come of that? I mean, where are we in terms of the messaging that you have conveyed to the National Treasury?
Well, at the moment, we are at a situation whereby we do not know what time and when the money is going to be released. But when we left at the time of the holidays during the recess, the promise from the state was that this money would be dispersed by the 20th of December.
Yeah.
And the Treasury Secretary Minister said that. Even the President himself promised members of Parliament that this money would come in December. So there's a bit of a concern, since we are in recess at the moment, why the money has been delayed and when is it going to be expected. I think the agitation to focus on the Treasury Minister or Cabinet Secretary is more kind of a pressure to get things done. And I think some people are, some members are justified in thinking that perhaps action should be taken action should be taken against the minister himself.
Yeah.
But I think this decision needs to be made at the highest level because the Cabinet Secretary is only a part of a chain of decision makers that can make this thing happen.
Thank you. Senator Ledamo Lekina, coming to you. I mean, why are we unable to get the fundamentals right? I mean, the education sector is allocated almost 28% of the national budget's funding, but still schools have no cash. The minister last Monday said that we have released the funding, but the lawmaker here says and others that schools are extremely experiencing difficulties in terms of running their affairs. I mean, why the inability? As a country, are we unable to fund fundamental areas and which are very critical, like education?
I think it's a question of economic inequality. If we had followed the trajectory that the former president, Mwai Kibaki, had set, we would not be having this problem. And this is a point where now I call for the National Assembly to call for a special sitting. In the Senate, we only need 15 members to be able to push the Speaker to call to gazette for a special sitting for us to be able to discuss this. If the members of the National Assembly, who has got the sole discretion of handling the CDF kitty, were really, interested in ensuring that this money is released, were really interested in ensuring that they come true to their threats, what I would expect them to do, and my good colleague here, is for them to cause for a special sitting to be able to decide whether we will continue this way or we find a way to ensure that that 28% budget that you're calling for is utilized effectively, in a mature way to ensure that these students will never have to, miss schools. It's actually very disheartening. Right now, the level of insecurity in this country has skyrocketed. If you now send kids home, the parents are going through a very difficult time trying to be able to even put food on the table. They saved some little money, they did their shopping, they know very well that this kitty is there to be able to support them. And then now you're denying them. It's actually really serious. And it is not only happening in the national government, even in county governments. As an example, Narok County government bursary is now in disarray. Parents do not know when they'll be able to get their kitty. And it's the same excuses that, we don't have money, yet the money is there. So I don't really think that my colleagues in the National Assembly are serious. Yeah. If this was in the Senate, if we had the mandate to be able to decide that, trust me, I'd be among the first people running around collecting 50, at least a minimum of 15 signatures to call for a special sitting. So I want to challenge my dear Apti here to be able to initiate that process of calling or gazettement of a special sitting to discuss this thing seriously. That is the only time we will be able to be taken seriously by Kenyans. Because currently, due to the economic inequality in this country, Kenyans will continue depending on the CDF kitty. Yeah. And this dependency syndrome is the one which is making us all lose our own freedoms. We are all slaves of our own making. We all depend on this CDF kitty. In fact, some people who can even afford to pay for their school kids will still say, na bursary, and bursary. So I really want to challenge my colleagues and say, now it's time for you to practice what you preach. If you're calling for the impeachment of my good friend, move with it, move with speed. But I agree with my colleague here that this is a matter that is affecting the whole line. And today, it is in line with what you're talking about. We're talking about the state of democracy. When corruption is inculcated into the culture, when independent institutions no longer have their freedom to be able to exercise their own independence, then we fall into this state where everything is in disarray. Yeah. I've been on this show illustrating and elaborating on the fact that the National Assembly has got the power of the purse, the money.
Thank you.
But we are now giving that away to the executive. We're giving them all our powers. And by doing that, the citizens will continue suffering.
Thank you. We'll talk at length about the state of democracy, which in many degrees is wanting in the country. Coming to you, Dauri Wakili, given what we have here, I mean, if you look between the financial years 2018 and 19, up to 2022-23 now, I mean, last financial year, besides the deficit in terms of funding education, also there is an increasing number of learners who the government cannot trace today about their whereabouts. I mean, that's beside the funding, another crisis on the horizon. How can this double-edged sort of danger that is facing the country be handled better from your perspective?
I think the education sector is going through a crisis. It's a funding crisis, it's a quality crisis, it's a vision crisis, and we seem to be in a state where there's utter confusion in our education sector. If you look at the last results that came out, there were issues with regards to those results. If you look at the schools intake, there are also issues. If you look at the question of capitation and funding of schools, there's an issue. The award of bursaries, there's a big issue. When you try to examine it, you can't quite see clarity in terms of government, where its vision is and what needs to be done. The priority appears to have been given to other items or other projects, government projects that perhaps bring in money and enable other people to make money. So priority in terms of providing education, priority in terms of providing clarity and the resources is a big problem. I listened to our members of parliament talking about the fact that money has not been given to schools. You talk to counties, they are telling you that some of them have not been given money for December, and they're struggling and surviving on overdrafts. I understand that some time back, salaries in the judiciary delayed because the money came in late. So I think we ought not just to have this discussion with regards to the role of treasury and release of funds and all that. We need to have a greater conversation in terms of what treasury is doing to support all these very, very critical institutions. And I think we have a big problem, and on my end, I hope that we would have that national moment in the National Assembly where we would say, you know what, let's put our politics aside. Let us look at these issues, because for me, education is the only equalizer we have if you look at how the level of social and economic inequity that are in this country. So if we allow our education system to go to the dogs, then the opportunity that majority of Kenyans have to uplift their lives in the future gets lost or destroyed at this particular time.
All right. Honorable Yusuf, coming to you, and then we'll go on a break, come back and talk about our topic of the day. And this is from the practical lenses that I want you to answer this. And the whereabouts one is a big question, because besides the approved budget, for example, in the financial year, that is the just ended financial year in 2023, of what was required was 82 billion in one stance, 64 billion was what was approved, therefore trading on a budget of deficit of 17.6 billion Kenya shillings. During that period also, learners who are not found were nearly 800,000. That's 794,231. Given this, and of course, what appears to be systems that are not working as they ought to be, how can we get out of this quagmire? Because it's not only an education affair, it's generally how the country is run. If you look at healthcare, if you look at the state of our infrastructure, service delivery seems to be not working, especially for critical sectors.
Well, if we start with education, I have been watching how the education structure in my own constituency works. And I believe that, in fact, having looked at this, that there is a serious dysfunctionality in the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education does not have the necessary budget to provide the quality of education that our kids require. Infrastructure in these institutions have been left in disrepair for a very long time. And also the general attitude, the morale, the discipline of teachers is completely lacking in many of these institutions. So one would think that the Ministry of Education, apart from managing examinations, also need to look at how our infrastructure and our facilities can be improved, because there's not much investment. Much of the budget that they get goes to teaching, for example. There's very little left for other developments. And if you go to a country like Tanzania or Botswana, you would find schools are very neat. They're well taken care of. When you get into the school, you feel here that there's a very disciplined, focused educationist. But when you come to Kenyan schools, things have fallen apart. And that is a reflection of the state of the mind of our teachers and school leadership. And that goes to the ministries as well. I don't think there has been much change in the Ministry of Education's bureaucracy for over this many years. So there is an accumulated problem of neglect, lack of funding, as well as mismanagement and poor discipline in the schools. And even if you are to inject money, it will take many years to turn around our educational system. So what we are looking now, and the questions that we are raising, the issues that we are raising, is just what is visible. You know, the metaphor of the iceberg. What you're looking at is what you can see. But there's a lot of problems that really are taking our educational system down. The standards of education are going down. The results of the examinations that not reflect the competence and the capability of our kids. Because I find that even in my office, there are times when I've employed graduates in journalism and in literature. And the ability of that particular candidate to write even a paragraph, a proper paragraph, is not there. So our Ministry of Education really needs to be shaken up and reformed, but nobody is going there. We are just dealing with the causes. We are firefighting. Okay. And sometimes we are doing critiquing the education, the examination boards. Sometimes we are looking at the lack of fees and opportunities for the kids. But there are a lot of multiple problems that needs to be addressed for the long term, not just today and tomorrow. And if we don't do that, at one point, Kenyan professionals, educated Kenyans, were much sought after as professionals in other countries. Still the case. But I think in the next few years, the standards are going to fall down to such a point that not many people will be employing Kenyans. Okay. Look recently, the recent concern from Nigeria saying they are looking at Kenyan certificates and degrees because the standards have fallen so much that even a country like Nigeria, which is famous for or infamous for its problems, is now critiquing, is fingering Kenya and saying, your education system is not good enough, even for us. Okay.
You're talking about the question of budget and the money meant to run the affairs of the Ministry of Education. I mean, 28%, more than 625 billion Kenya shillings. That seems to be plenty. Is the cause then mismanagement and direction of the resources to the relevant institutions within the ministry and proper handling?
Yes, and there's also a lot of wastage and leakages. I mean, you may call it corruption. But you know, if you go to any of these schools, like a primary school or a secondary school in my constituency, apart from what the government is providing, apart from what we're giving as bursaries, parents are under pressure to pay little amounts of money that at the end of the day, when you calculate, is a heavy pressure on the parents. And you wonder, where is that money going to? What kind of accountability is? When you get into some of these institutions, you find they're completely run down. Even the the teachers don't have proper desks and chairs, proper papers and things like that. And yet a lot of money is collected either through bursaries or through extortion of parents. You know, there are calculations that are made, and if you don't bring that money as a parent, your child does not go to school. And there's a lot of other little pressures on the parent. So there's a serious problem. It's not only the amount of money that has been given. We're not looking very closely. We're not scrutinizing where that money is going. And we're not looking at the behavior and the mindset of the people who are running these schools.
Thank you. Senator, briefly, as we go on a break and come back and talk about the state of our democracy, it all boils down to leadership and the management of the resources, which appears to be lacking, as is the case in all other, largely a large percentage of that, of how the government is generally run. And this has a spillover effect of also the previous administration. It isn't only a problem confined to this administration. But given what you have mentioned, how can that bureaucracy, the layer of bureaucracies be addressed? Because it seems to be problematic from the Member of Parliament's view.
I think, first of all, in reality, Kenyans are paying too much taxes to continue paying school fees. So I think we need to look at the whole taxation system. We need to look at school fees, whether it is necessary for Kenyans to be able to pay for that. We now need to have a more futuristic, thinking when it comes to the issue of parents paying school fees. What my colleague is saying here is a reality. This bursary, everybody is depending on those bursaries, So it's an issue of dependency syndrome. It's an issue of lack of proper leadership. And this is all in line with the subject of the day today. I'm looking at democracy in this country as having been completely captured by one institution. So my take on this matter is that it is important for us, first of all, to look at our education system to see whether the central management point is going to hold. In other jurisdictions, there are school districts. Like, for instance, now we have devolved, and we've seen that devolution has continued to support economies to grow. I think it's about time that we try to decentralize, even, apart from the policy, the national policy, school management completely, such that counties can also budget effectively to be able to help the schools. Once you budget to assist the schools, you know how many students you have. You'll find a county, I'll just name one county as an example, like the county of Machakos. They have almost 40,000 ECD students. They can easily manage those 40,000 students. A county like Narok has probably got about maybe 60,000 of those ECD students. Those ECD students, we have to look at it, and we look at all our income stream and say, which income stream should we align with this budget so that we can ensure that we support our schools, not only the ECDs, primary schools and secondary school. Parents should start thinking about, and also leaders should start thinking about the tertiary level of education. But in terms of primary education, it is imperative. What Eric was saying is that it is imperative for us to really invest heavily on our education system. Our levels of education are falling.
Thank you. When we get back from the break, I'll start with Eric Theuri here on the state of our democracy, given what has happened last week and the statement to that effect made by the Chief Justice Martha Koome, and to which the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua said, yes, we will be by your doorstep on Thursday at 2:15 p.m. to deliver the petition against a judge of the High Court who presided over his matter when he was the lawmaker representing Madira constituency. We'll be talking more about that, and also how to further deepen our democratic credentials. The hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Back with more after the break. Stay tuned.